Hi, and welcome to Common Time Yoga. My name is Grace, and today we're going to be talking about building a nice foundation for our alignment. And this is an alignment that we will reference a lot, or I will reference a lot when we do postures. But this can also be totally influential in your alignment for singing or your posture for singing, whatever vocabulary you want to use. So we're going to start out seated on a mat or on a chair, even on a piano bench, just somewhere I would recommend with a harder surface. And whatever easy seated posture you want to begin with, we're going to try to find our sit bones and how they connect with the mat. So maybe rocking back and forth, maybe side to side, just somewhere where you can feel your sit bones in the mat. Now, put your hands on your hip bones, all the way around your pelvis if you can, sort of from the sacrum to the front edge of the hip bones if you can, just somewhere where you can get a good firm grip on it. And begin to tilt the pelvis forward and back, feeling how this feels for your sit bones, sort of rolling on them back and forth. Notice what it does in your spine. And notice if you have any sort of reaction in the cervical spine up here at the neck. Sometimes when the pelvis tilts forward, the cervical spine arches in the same way as the low back. And when we come back, everything folds inward. So let's do this a couple more times. Also notice if any particular motion is connected with a part of the breath cycle. So for most people, when we inhale, the pelvis tilts forward a bit, the back arches in the natural inhalation form, and then exhaling, curling down. This is the body's natural way of making space and then compressing space. And these movements are just an exaggerated form of that. So now that we've kind of gotten used to these tilts in the pelvis, find a place that's a happy medium. Right in the middle, you'll feel like you're balancing on your sit bones at just the right spot. And this is the neutral pelvis position. So if you are not new to yoga, neutral pelvis is referenced a lot as an alignment cue when you're in a posture, but we don't hear it a lot in singing. So I'd like to draw your attention to it today. So now that we have that position in our mind, let's move into a tabletop pose and see how it feels there. So coming onto hands and knees under the hips, wrists under elbows, under shoulders, making sure that we're stacking the joints. Notice where your pelvic position naturally went. For some people, there's a natural tuck. For most people, there's a natural inclination to tilt the pelvis forward and have a little bit of an arch in the back. So from here, whatever your habitual posture was here, intentionally come to a neutral pelvis position. So you might feel a little bit of lengthening in the low back when you do this. Now inhale and tilt the pelvis forward and let the gaze come up. This is our cow position. Exhale, tilt the pelvis backward, and allow the body to tuck in. And then inhale, again tilting the pelvis as far forward as it goes. And then tilting the pelvis back. And inhale, coming back to the tabletop position. And really tune in to how different the neutral position feels from your habitual position. Maybe go back and forth between the two. Now, we're going to tuck the toes under We're gonna come into down dog, so pressing back into downward facing dog. Now from here, notice your pelvic position. See if you can tilt it forward and back. It's gonna be a little bit more challenging in this posture. On the next inhalation, walk your feet forward. We're gonna bring the feet between the hands, big toes together, heels about an inch or two apart. And then we're gonna bend the knees, grounding the feet into the floor and sweeping the arms up overhead, palms together at heart center. So, now we're here in a standing position. And notice what your habitual pelvic position is here. Again, for most people, we'll have that slight arch in the back, a slight forward tilt of the pelvis. And for some, we might have a little bit of a tuck going on. So whatever you're doing, just intentionally come to a neutral pelvis position. And notice how that feels. Maybe walk around a little bit. Notice if it changes as you move your body. And now coming back, toes together, heels apart. And if it's more comfortable for you, feet can come at hip width distance apart. Being aware and keeping the pelvis at neutral. Now we're going to draw our awareness to the feet. So, a lot of people teach the foot as a three-pronged plug. So we have the heel, and then we have the blade, and then we have the ball of the foot. And those are the three prongs. So with the feet on the floor, hip width or toes together, see if you can put your weight back onto your heels without falling over. You can try lifting up one foot at a time. And now letting the weight shift to the outside of the feet. Do 1 foot at a time, so sort of coming in a circle around. Really accessing all of the weight that you can put on the blade of the foot. And then coming onto the balls of the feet, just feeling what it is to have weight in all these areas. And now back to a neutral position. Lift your toes up off the mat. Where does the weight go when you do this? This is individual for each person. And then set the toes back down. When you set the toes down, notice for yourself if your weight remains in the same spot. For me, my weight goes into my heels when I pick my toes up. And if I'm not intentional about it, when I put my toes down, I lean forward. So, trying again, lifting the toes, weights coming back a bit, and then setting the toes down. I feel an even distribution of weight on my feet. And what we're going for here is actually a sort of lift in the arch of the foot. So, how can we tell if we're lifting the arches of our feet? We'll come into a habitual stance. So nothing for yoga, maybe weight is askew on one hip, but allow the feet to fall inward. This is a habitual stance for a lot of people. So the knees rotate inward, the ankles rotate inward, and actually the pelvis tilts forward a bit in this position. So now lift your toes up off the mat and put weight evenly from all three prongs in the feet, and then set the toes down, maintaining this foot position. And go back to the habitual posture. And again, lifting the toes. Notice the slight rotation of the ankle and the heel, a slight backward rotation of the pelvis, and then set the toes down. So this is an active foot posture with the arches raised. This allows us to keep a nice neutral pelvis position, and it also helps keep the knees nice and soft. If you notice at any point while you're trying to manipulate your feet that you begin to lock your knees, just become aware of it and let them soften, maybe even bend them a bit. Notice what happens to your pelvis position when you do bend them. So, why would we care about our foot position if we are singing? It's all a part of our alignment, and alignment starts from the ground up. We're building a foundation. So we want to make sure we're setting up for as much success as we can have by having our feet nice and grounded and active, assisting, softening the knees, having this nice neutral pelvis. And when we're in a standing position with neutral pelvis, notice what happens in the lower abdominal region. So come into your habitual posture and then go to intentional neutral pelvis. You might notice a bit of tightening in the lower abdomen. This is the core we need as musicians when we're playing our instruments, whether we're standing or whether we're sitting. Just this light engagement here, keeping us upright, keeping us strong. For singers, you'll notice that this will even help with engagement in your sound, with breath engagement. So, from the ground up, again, this is your little foundational checklist. We come into a habitual standing posture, or even stand as though you're going to sing, which for some people is this position. For some people, it's this position. There are many different ways we're taught to stand for singing. But bring the feet about hip width apart. Activate the arches. Soften the knees. Bring the pelvis to a neutral position and feel this light engagement of the lower abdominals. And this is it, from feet all the way up to waist. This is our foundational alignment. So this is just part one of the alignment videos that I'll put out. Part two, of course, we will go from the core all the way up and see what that looks like. I hope this was helpful for you. Don't worry if some of the things didn't make sense to you. The raising your arches is not as easy as it sounds for some people. So just keep at it, keep watching this video, and just playing around with foot position. You'll get it. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see part two and you're not yet subscribed, please subscribe. And I'll have that video up next week.